integrity and well-being. And I think it's really important for me to start there because it does explain the direction I'll take on this talk, which could have gone many ways. I'm pessimistic because the nature of the companies and the products they created, and I'm going to get into this a bit more later, but they were not created with education in mind. And in fact, were created to do to eliminate some of the very things that are important to learning, like friction, the challenge of figuring something out, the challenge of staring at a blank page, the challenge of like really wrestling with things and coupling my thinking with my writing or my thinking with generating images has now been decoupled, right? So I'm pessimistic about our ability to successfully shoehorn this 21st century technology into an education which is, if we're honest with ourselves, is built on a 20th century, sometimes 19th century platform. I'm hopeful because there's some promising experimentation going on, both on the part of students and on researchers and faculty, that show intentional and thoughtful integration of AI that could be helpful for tackling some of the challenges that we have, that AI did not create for us, but shines a mirror on. And I'm hoping that we all have the necessary moral agency to not simply acquiesce to what the Kool-Aid pourers would like us to believe, that we must do this, we must integrate it into everything, but that we pause and we take some thoughtful, deliberative time to ensure that learning and the engaging student experience stay front and center in any consideration we make about integrating AI into the academy. I need you to bear with me for a second because before I get into that, before I get into the age of AI, I want to ground us in a pre-AI world. It's 2008. And I'm teaching our after education class to our students. So after students violate academic integrity at UC San Diego, we try and leverage the cheating moment as a teachable moment, teaching them how to fail forward from ethical mistakes. So I'm teaching this class and a student comes up to me afterwards. She says, "I'd like to tell you why I'm here." I'm like, okay. And she said, "So I wrote my paper and then I sent it home to my mom like I always do. And my mom sent it back to me. It was really different. And I said to my mom, 'You didn't go on the internet for any of this stuff, did you? Because my mom loves to go on the internet.' And she said no, but Turnitin said it was 40% plagiarized." And by this time she has a tear, coming down her cheek. And I said, "Okay, so what's the lesson learned?" And she said, "Check the work my mom does." And she wasn't being sassy with me. It turns out that all her life, her mother demanded that she share her papers with her assignments with her before she submitted them to make sure they were perfect. And I said to her, "You know what, actually it's not the lesson learned. We don't care if your mother can write, and clearly she can't because she plagiarized." I said, "We care about what you're thinking about the readings. What new thoughts do you have? Are you able to communicate them? What are you wrestling with? How have you grown from the last paper you've written? What are you learning? We care about you." And it was like that, proverbial light bulb that went off over her head because it had been so long since somebody had talked to her about learning. She was raised in an environment, not just with her family, but with our educational system, that grades are currency. And that's grades that is what matters, and grades are what they should focus on. Now, the student's not wrong. Grades are currency. They have been. They were 17 years ago when I talked to her, and they remain more so now. What's the average? I don't know what the average GPA of your entering freshman here is at Berkeley, but at San Diego, I think it's 4.2. So the average freshman at UC San Diego is better than perfect. When I talk to students, they said, "Well, I've never turned in anything in high school that I got less than 100% on." So when they get their first A- or their first B+, let alone a C or a D or an F, that's a real hit to their identity. The one thing they're good at, for many of them, we're not a big athlete school, one thing they're good at is school. The thing is this, and this is what I tell students, grades are only valued because they're supposed to represent something more significant, more profound. Your learning, how you've professionally and personally developed, right? Your skills and abilities, they're proxies. They're meant to be proxies for these things, as are our certificates, our degrees, right? For decades, 100 years. Employers in society have been using our degrees as proxies to say this person is qualified at the bachelor's level, master's level, PhD level to do X. Now, to do X might be math or CSE, but also there was all these other things wrapped up in there, right? They're going to be better communicators, they're going to be better problem solvers, they're going to be better critical thinkers, so on and so forth. So we have a social contract with society. We promise not just to facilitate learning, but to certify it. We promise that our graduates are going to go out there with knowledge and skills and abilities that they didn't have before, that they're going to be positive contributors to society. And I would say that this moral obligation supply chain to get us to that social contract has been broken for a while, much before AI. So to get to that social contract, we have to do a lot of things, not all of which are on this slide, but I want to narrow it down to a few things here, because I focus on academics, right? I focus on learning. This moral obligation supply chain starts with instructors deciding what are the learning outcomes for this course and how do I design fair and honest pedagogy and assessments that will measure that learning, the achievement of that, the mastery of that learning, those learning outcomes. Students then have to fairly and honestly demonstrate their knowledge on those assessments so that faculty can fairly and honestly then do the validation of learning, right? If anything goes wrong in the supply chain, then the school cannot certify learning knowledge and abilities. If faculty aren't paying attention to learning outcomes, or they don't design fair and honest pedagogy and assessments, or valid assessments, if students cheat on those assessments, if instructors, well here, let's put it this way. If students use AI, faculty use AI to create those assessments, and students use AI to complete those assessments, and then instructors use AI to grade those assessments, we're a diploma mill, right? This was breaking down before AI came along, and AI is making it a much more urgent problem for us to address. The problem is that the way we measure things, the student might seem like they're successful. They've got the GPA. They're completing their degree in time. Ooh, maybe they've even reduced time to degree, which is what we love, right? Maybe they're graduating and they're even getting a job right after they graduate. So it seems like they're being successful, but really it's broken down. The truth is what we do here depends on ethical engagement. When faculty and students, again, I'm just narrowing in on them, I'm not blaming them for all of this, when they fail to engage in the hard work of teaching, learning, and assessing with integrity, we lose our moral authority in society. We lose our authority to certify knowledge abilities, and we're already seeing this, right? How many a lot of employers now, there was a study, I think, either done by LinkedIn or Indeed, that looked at the number of job ads that no longer require a bachelor's degree. All of the colleges that are closing across the nation, people are losing trust and faith that their investment with us is worth it. And since our focus is on, in this room, is on the student experience, I'm going to zoom in on the students for a while. So why wouldn't students fully engage? We were talking right before my talk. It's like, you're at Berkeley. It's a physical, in-person campus. You didn't sign up for Western Governors University or University of Phoenix. A couple reasons. One, you want the Berkeley name. But two, don't you want the Berkeley experience? So why would students choose to pay all this money, move to Berkeley, and not engage? Well, they might disengage because of personal forces like moral disengagement. That I just don't see the value in doing honest work. I don't even recognize that what I'm doing with AI is unethical, perhaps. I don't realize that giving my friend my paper so they can learn from a model paper might be a violation of academic integrity. So I've disengaged from the ethics of it all. Definitely that extrinsic motivation for grades, especially in the UC system, especially our students. And this, again, is not their fault. Grades are currency, right? And then low self-efficacy. I don't think I can do it. Or I don't think I can do it to the level I want to, or to the level my parents want me to. But I just don't believe that I can. And my animation's going to come up in the wrong order here, so I'm going to be giving away the secret. Students cheat because they're human. which means that they're also influenced by the situational factors around them, the course context. We were talking before about, I wonder how many remote or online classes we have masquerading as in-person classes. They don't require, it's a lecture hall of 400 kids, so there's no engagement in the lecture. The lectures are podcasted, so I really don't have to go. And all of the assessments are online and unsupervised. That's an online course, even if it's in the books as an in-person course, right? So course context matter. Are there more opportunities to cheat? Are there more opportunities to disengage? Can I find, it's coming at me more so than I'm looking for it. Peer norms. Do I think everybody else is doing it? I'm sure if I asked you all in the room, how many of you are more likely to break the speed limit when others around you on the highway are breaking the speed limit? We'd all put up our hands. Well, 99% of us, right? We do change our behavior based on what we think is happening, and this is even more a stronger reason for, stronger influence for students, because I think there's still, especially in the STEM disciplines, where there's grading on a curve. So if I'm not cheating and somebody else is, but also just competition for jobs or grad schools, right? And finally, instructor influence. If I don't think the instructor cares. So I often have instructors say to me, it's not my job to police cheating or prevent cheating. And I say to them, the students think it is. So if you have not put any mechanisms in place to try and reduce those opportunities, students think you don't care. And that might influence them more to also disengage. Now, let's be clear, not all disengagement looks like cheating. It can vary, right? Some people disengage and flunk out. They give up. Some disengage and just scrape by with that 2.1 or whatever it is they need to graduate. And so they barely graduate, but maybe they engaged in their major courses, but disengaged from their GE courses or whatever the case may be. But some want to disengage without flunking out. So they fake it to appear to faculty, to their institution, to researchers like yourselves, to be engaged because they're progressing in their major, they have the GPA, they're progressing time to degree, all of that kind of thing, but they're really not engaged at all. All three of these are problems, right, for us as a university. They tell us that what we're doing might not be working well for everybody. But my expertise is on the faking part, so I'm gonna zoom in on that one. Students will fake engagement through what we call cognitive offloading, right? This doesn't have to mean cheating, but it could mean not thoroughly engaging in the learning opportunities that are available to them. So I might use Google Translate instead of learning the language, right? Do I really need to? I've got the AirPods now that will do direct live translation. I don't really need to learn French, so in my French class, I'm gonna write my paper in English and give it to Google Translate to put into French for me. Or maybe even just a paragraph of that. Or it might just be something as simple as, I'm not going to class, I'll just get notes from my friend who goes. It might even have them do that one little participation thing is where I scan the QR code to answer the quiz at the end of class to prove I was there. Might even have them do that for me. Copying from the internet or friends. Do you remember Cliff's and Sparks notes? Good old summaries. Well, they were done by humans with the intent of accurately conveying what the book was about. They might not have been perfect. Now students just use ChatGPT, which is not a great idea since it bullshits, right? It makes stuff up. And so I'm allowed to say that, by the way, because that's an official scientific term in the AI world. So reading summaries instead of books, ChatGPT, tell me what, Moby Dick is about. Getting other humans to do the work for them, which is known as contract cheating. How many of you have heard of the phrase contract cheating? A few, okay. It's $1 billion+ industry. I'll show you more in a little bit. So, point is, students are human. We have always offloaded. Those of us that are in the room, if we think back, we can think of times where we've offloaded. Sometimes it was not cheating. Like we use our cell phones so we don't have to memorize phone numbers anymore. That's offloading, right? And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's lying, right? It becomes cheating when it's a dishonest, when I'm presenting myself dishonestly, when I'm presenting as if I have knowledge and abilities or skills that I do not have. That's when it becomes dishonest. But we've all done it. We've all offloaded. We've all engaged in this kind of fake engagement, but it used to take more effort, right? In the 20th century, before the internet, cheating was really hard. I think I might have cheated in my C+ programming class, in hindsight. I do remember I found it really difficult because I'm not a detail-oriented person, and if you forgot one little thing, right, the whole program didn't work, and you couldn't figure out why for the life of you. And so I do remember having this guy help me a lot. I don't remember if he actually did the assignments for me or taught me, so I might have cheated. But I had to find the guy, I had to ask him for help. It's a little bit more awkward, it takes a little bit more effort. Or I had to you had to handwrite notes on your arm, or remember when you were told if you first started teaching to turn your hat, make students turn their hats around because they wrote on the brim, or there were videos about kids who photoshopped the labels, that's after the internet, but photoshopped the labels on Coke bottles, all sorts of fun stuff. My point is, pre-millennials were just as tempted to fake engagement, but we had fewer opportunities. It was just a lot harder. Then the internet in the late 20th to early 21st century came along, and opportunities for students to satisfy that itch, that temptation, became much more plentiful, much more, it's easier, right? I joke with the kids that if I wanted to plagiarize, I'm from Canada, I had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to the library and physically write, have the textbook there and then physically write from the book to plagiarize. And then it was just Control-C, Control-V. Super easy. Think about yourself being 19 years old. Maybe some of you were when the internet came along. But then again, faking it was easier, but so was detecting it. Turnitin came along with their similarity detection tool, and the world was saved, and nothing bad has ever happened since. But because Turnitin came along and started finding plagiarism, that was what gave birth to the contract cheating industry. Now if I can just, this video to go. So has anybody ever done this? Googled this? Write my paper for me? Now this, obviously I just did this the other day, so it's going to reference AI, but this existed for, the term contract cheating was coined in 2006. And we estimate that it's $1 billion+ industry. And if you think AI is going to put them out of business, they are advertising themselves as human written, and therefore they won't get detected by AI detectors. But maybe I just don't even want to take my class at all. These advertisements are all over the internet. It takes me a little bit of conscious effort to cheat, right, by going out and Googling to find one, except our international students tell us they are bombarded with invitations from these companies. In fact, these companies will send people into Discord groups that students have set up for their class, pretend they're a student in the class, kind of just say, hey, is anybody else struggling with this paper coming up? Do you want to get together and study? And then they kind of just seduce them into that world. You mean I can pay someone to do this for me? They're helping me, right? Handle all your online exams in a convenient manner. Don't lose your score. My colleagues in Australia take this much more seriously than we do in America. And they are able to identify enrolled persons, people who are enrolled in their school but aren't doing a single assignment. And how do they do that? Well, there's IP addresses logging to that student's account from Kenya, Ukraine, and India all on the same day. They call it impossible travel. So that existed all before ChatGPT came on the scene in November 2022. So what is this student experience in the age of AI? So now all of a sudden the opportunities for faking it are built into everything and they're everywhere all at once. You don't even have to Google for it anymore. We've got extensions that are built into, that are in Canvas. And so I can just have it submit, answer all my questions for me. I'm moving the mouse around there. Or even when I try and Google something, right, to do some research, the AI overview is the first thing that pops up. Remember when we used to be worried about Wikipedia? It was quaint. Now the AI overview summarizes Wikipedia. We can't even read Wikipedia pages anymore. Or if I've installed the Grammarly extension, have any of you ever tried to install the Grammarly extension? It is invasive. I installed it to see what my students are experiencing. I had to turn it off because it kept telling me, you're a bad writer, you're a bad writer. Like, fix this, fix this. And I'm like, I am not a bad writer. It's very invasive, I would say, right? So it's just there in your face all the time. Don't do the work yourself. Let us do it for you. Speaking of, how many of you have learned about the new Grammarly service? So they'll now predict students' grades for them. So it'll write their paper for them. So for those that think Grammarly is just a grammar and spelling checker, it is not. It is an AI company. But either it'll write the paper for the student, or it'll fix the student's writing, or it'll just, if I give it my paper, plus the instructions for the paper, plus the grading rubric, and the name of my professor, it'll go online. It'll look up the professor on ratemyprofessor.com or wherever else, find out everything it can about Tricia, and then it'll say the student.
Can predict what our instructors
I'm going to skip him marketing to us. Then I'm going to say, Professor Tricia will probably give you an A-, and here's how we'll fix it so that you get an A. The big problem with this is not just that it further entrenches students in the extrinsic motivation of getting the grade and producing a perfect product that will get a grade, but it further reinforces that the product's all that matters, and it tells them that there's a certain way of writing which is the best way of writing. And I have read many of a Grammarly produced papers, and students say, well, I just used Grammarly to fix my writing, and I said, well, it broke your writing, because now you sound like a robot. This poor student, who's actually like a data science student specializing in machine learning, was reported to my office for using AI illicitly. And she's like, I didn't, I just used Grammarly. So turns out her dad has a law firm. Turns out she does a lot of her assignments at the law firm. Turns out the law firm has the pro version of Grammarly. So it turns out she went through, and every time Grammarly said, hey, here's a suggestion, she just went, yes, 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 yes. And she said, I feel so stupid. My major is involved, I'm learning about machine learning, and I had no idea that's what grammar, I didn't even think about it, because my dad uses it, everybody in the law firm uses it, and she didn't really think about it, totally changing her voice. And students have been targeted as a core consumer. And I would argue that the entire educational system has been intentionally entangled. You have to do it. The students are using it anyways. You might as well integrate it in. If you don't integrate it in, they're going to graduate without any AI skills, and then they're going to fail as employees. But they kept releasing things free to students. I don't know if remember last March, or right around final exam time for semester schools, ChatGPT released its its pro version to students for free just for that certain period of time. Then Google Gemini said, we'll one-up you, we'll give it to students for free for a year. And then Perplexity Comet came out in September and released it for free to anybody with an EDU address. Have any of you used Perplexity Comet yet? Okay. The worst part about this, I'll get to my hopeful side eventually. The worst part about this is that we have no idea if these tools are hindering or amplifying student learning. Our students, including if any of you have kids in the K through 12 system, are in a massive pilot project. They are the proverbial rats in the cage, and we're seeing if the experiment's going to work on them. Now, we've done this before to students, but it's getting bad because Perplexity is actually putting out ads telling students to use their tools to cheat. This is the first AI company that has admitted, so I appreciate their honesty and transparency. It's the first AI company has admitted that they're there to help students to disengage from the hard work of learning. And again, this is just one example from LinkedIn. It's not that AI will replace people. AI will replace people who don't know how to use AI. So this is Perplexity comment. This just came out about 3 weeks ago and freaked people out. Because we've had agents before, these AI companies have told us, here's an agent, and they never quite live up to the hype. Well, Perplexity comment did. So I had it log in and complete my AIRB quiz for me. Didn't tell it which course. I have many courses in my Canvas account. Didn't tell it which quiz. So it found, well, first, it bypassed Duo security, our two-factor authentication. So it went in and it found the right course. It then found the only quiz that was published. And look, can you see that? Great. Look at what it's projecting an image of what it's seeing, and it's projecting this whole inner monologue that is using, energy, right, as it's doing this, just to tell me I'm clicking. It's going to say reasoning soon. I'm reasoning. Then it'll say things like, great, I've successfully answered the first 5 questions. Now I need to complete this. So it goes on and on like this. At one point it realizes it's in the instructor mode. And so it said, oops, I've got to switch to the student mode. Switch to the student mode to complete the test. And then, oops. And then I just want to show you the end here, where it gets to. The quiz has been completed, successfully submitted. I got these right. Here's the points I got. At this point, I'm still thinking this isn't true, right? I love how it says your quiz was submitted successfully. You scored 6.67 out of 7. You improved from your earlier preview. And I still thought at this point, it's lying. There's no way it's doing all of this. And yet, sure enough, I went into SpeedGrader, and there was the submitted test for the test student, 6.67 out of 7. That was about 3 weeks ago, and just yesterday, or 2 days ago, OpenAI released its Atlas, its agentic browser. So any online assessment in Canvas that's unsupervised is not a valid assessment of learning. Oh, and it's being put in wearables.
I was thinking about this. The Meta Ray-Ban displays are going to make cheating in school way too easy because, first of all, they look pretty normal and you could get them with a prescription. And then once you have them on in class, it's too easy because the AI assistant can see what you're seeing and it can hear you even if you're whispering. Hey, Meta, what's the answer to the second question? And it would work. Or if you just want to look it up the old-fashioned way, nobody would know. You can't see the screens from the outside and you can control the screens with your hand in your pocket or your hand behind your back. If teachers didn't know about them, and if they weren't $800, they would be the ultimate cheating machine.
I listened to an interview with my friend Zuck on a podcast who was talking about his amazing new glasses. And at one point I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to say something ethical because he mentioned the word privacy. I was like, great. I'm worried about these glasses being around campus and people just recording me 24/7, right? And listening to my conversations. And so I was like, okay, he's talking about privacy. But
I was thinking about this.
Oh, no,
the Meta Ray-Ban displays are...
But for him, it's a privacy issue if the person that you're looking at can basically see what you're seeing. So it's a nice, clear, crisp display for the person wearing it, but nobody from the outside can see that you're seeing anything other than them. And his band, his neuroband, he was saying, so now, it's kind of not socially acceptable if I pull my phone out when I'm talking to someone to look something up. So now I can just pretend that I'm still listening to them, and he's got his band on, and it detects micro muscle movements, so I can be doing this the whole time and doing something else and sending emails to people, and nobody will know because it's not socially acceptable to let them know that, so if they know that you're looking at something at all. Obviously, that makes it a very good cheating device, but I think we should also be worried about things like privacy. Anyways. These glasses are fairly obvious because they're Ray-Bans and they look like sunglasses, but pretty soon they will look like your glasses. And there is a company, I think it's called Halo, that's working. So Meta glasses, you can see a tiny camera and an indicator light comes on when it's recording, but there's at least one company I've heard of that's working on that being totally obscure from the viewer. And when they were asked about privacy rights in two-party recording states like California, they said that's up to the user to make sure they have permission. So how are students responding? Well, we're going to hear from two later, but before then, well, they're responding by using it. They're the biggest age group to use it, and it appears that they're mainly using it from September to April and not over breaks. This was a survey just in July. You know, they've used it in their coursework. The majority of them, I would say it's probably 100% or close to that. Some students do have an ethical objection to these tools and they're refusing to use them. Now, this doesn't mean they were cheating with them, right? They're using them for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes they might have been allowed. But I've talked with about 250 students who have been reported for misusing Gen AI, and this is what they've told me. Instead of Google or Google Scholar to do research. Okay. Not smart, because it makes stuff up. And when I've asked them why they don't use a tool that's purposely designed for the very tasks they're doing, like Google Scholar, they look at me and some look at me and say, "What's Google Scholar?" To check if my assignment dresses a prompt. So I've written the paper and then I give the prompt and the assignment or maybe the grading rubric to ChatGPT and it tells me how I did, or Grammarly. To create exam study notes, again, not unethical, but it makes stuff up. So if they're not using it in addition to learning the actual material, they might be learning wrong stuff, right? Now we start to get into a different category. To brainstorm a response to an assignment. Might be okay unless brainstorming was part of the challenge of learning, was part of the objectives. I had a meeting with faculty and one faculty said, "I'm totally fine with them doing that." And another faculty was like, "No way, that's the heart of what we're trying to get them to do." We talked about summarizing the readings instead of reading them. Make my writing sound better. I do not just hear this from students for whom English is not their most comfortable language. I hear it from every single student. Why? It's UC San Diego. I gotta be better than perfect. But two, if we're honest with ourselves, I don't know about, well, I'll be honest with you. When I was an undergrad, I would write my paper and then I would have that big I don't know what it was, thesaurus. And I would read through my paper and I'd be like, "That word sounds dumb." And I would look up a smarter word and then replace it. And in third year, I had a psych professor tell me to knock it off. You sound ridiculous. You're using big words where big words are not needed, right? So every student wants to make their writing sound better. And they think that Grammarly sounds better. They think that ChatGPT sounds better. There's something about a machine's doing it, so it must be better or must be right. There's something in our psyche about this. To co-write my assignment for me, to do my assignment for me. It's hard to tell, but the one that was easy was he was supposed to do a research project on the behavior of birds. Like he was supposed to go out for a behavior psych class, observe some birds. Like I'm thinking this is a cool class, right? It's experiential. Observe some birds, take some data, write up about it. He handed in his paper and it said, he forgot to take out the line that said, "But really you should collect your own data and do the research yourself if you really want to understand this." So that one was pretty easy. And of course, to answer exam questions. So this brings us, remember my 2008 story about Mom, who did the writing for the student or fixed the student's writing? Let's head to 2024, to the life of a sophomore, 19 years old, majoring in public health. Let's just call it at a top research university in California. She's enrolled in 4 courses that quarter, all in-person courses, but yet, at least for one of those courses, all of her assessments of learning were remote, asynchronous, computer-based. She takes her final exam at home. She finds the exam difficult. She gets through most of it, but she's struggling. She's tired. She's frustrated. She studied so hard. She doesn't understand why she's struggling so much. And then just a mouse click away, there's AI. And she can't resist the temptation. She clicks on it, gets an answer, copies it into the exam, finishes the exam on time, relieved, goes on break, then she gets a notice. I think you've cheated with ChatGPT on your final exam. So when she came in to meet with me, she immediately took responsibility. Yep, I did it. She's embarrassed, she's ashamed, she doesn't want to do it again. I also found her pretty aware for a 19-year-old, and she said, I'm taking 4 classes in my major this quarter. All 4 are in-person classes, and all 4 have remote asynchronous computer-based exams only. That's the only assessments. Can I please take my test in the testing center with you because I don't trust myself to resist the opportunity to cheat? When I started in 2006 at UC San Diego, I thought we should be able to graduate people who choose to make the right ethical decision even when they're tempted not to be. And I still think we should work towards that. I also have come to the awareness that we should not expect our students to be superhuman. I have a lot of faculty that say to me, I just want to trust my students. I'm like, that is so unfair. Picture this. You're on a health kick. How many of you have a sweet tooth? Okay, so you're on a health kick, right? You want to cut down on your sugar. Do you fill your kitchen with donuts and force yourself to stare at them because you trust yourself that you're not going to eat them? No, you clear your kitchen of sugar, right? And yet we say to students, I trust you, so please go home and take this online asynchronous assessment and don't use ChatGPT because I trust you. And then we're disappointed when they don't do it. We cannot expect our students to be superhuman. It's unfair. All humans need help sticking with their values. I'm not saying all our students want to cheat. I'm saying all of our students are human. And they'll be tempted. And there's too many opportunities. And if I was 19 today, I don't know that I could resist them, honestly. So we should not expect them to go home and sit and stare at the donuts and not take them. We should help them stay true to their values and help them reach their goals in an honest and ethical way. So that's, I think, what students are experiencing. But what's the implications of AI for learning and engagement? Well, as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, they weren't designed for learning, right? They were designed for engagement. If you work with them often, you'll ask it for one thing, it'll be like, would you also like me to do this? Would you like me to do this? Can I do this for you? And it's like, no, I just wanted you to do this one thing, go away. I do, if I need an ego boost, I'll just go talk to ChatGPT and it tells me how smart I am. Brilliant ideas. So it's creating a dependency and really not only reducing friction for learning and doing, but reducing the friction it takes to have relationships in real life. It's a lot easier to just go hang out with a chatbot than with real people. Addiction. The new California law requires chatbots to tell kids to take breaks. Guess how long a kid has to be on it before they have to tell them to take a break? 3 hours. 3 hours is the law. Then OpenAI or whoever has to say, hey, you should take a break, or it shuts off or something, I'm not quite sure. Ease, obviously, to reduce, eliminate friction, and automation. Its job is to automate cognition. And our students are worried. This is some quotes from a massive study. They're skeptical about the tools helping them actually learn. They're worried about privacy issues. This one doesn't say it, but I know they're also worried about the ethical issues, the energy uses, the theft of intellectual property, the human exploitation, the exploitation of human labor that they use to train the data. And the students still prefer human interaction. And they're worried that they'll get so sucked into these chatbots that they'll get isolated. They're also worried that it'll have a negative impact on their critical thinking. As we wrestle with whether we should integrate AI into higher education, I think we have to think about not just the implications for learning, but also their physical and mental health. This is the last downer before I get to what we can do, I promise. I just think it's so important to talk about this because there's so much hype out there about why we should all be doing it that I really do feel like we need this countercultural narrative. Students are turning to AI, people are turning to AI chatbots for friendship and emotional support. And so if we're going to encourage their use, or if we're going to purchase subscriptions and give them away to our employees and our students, then I think we have to worry about this, because we've now provided the tool. And we have no idea yet, we're starting to learn, but the full impact of these on student cognition, mental or physical development, let alone their student experience. And it could have dire ends. This student, who was taking all of his schooling online because he had a health issue, he started using ChatGPT for schoolwork. And within just, I think, 4 months, he took his own life at the advice and encouragement of ChatGPT. Adam said, I want to leave. I don't think I can read this. It's not good. It's not to say that chatbots are always bad, right? So there's some users reporting great psychological benefits from using it. But I think we have to think more broadly about this. So what should we do? Sorry. We have to research the impact of this. We cannot drink the Kool-Aid that just says, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, we have no choice, we gotta do it. We have to research it, and we have to listen to our students. So thank you. I've never cried before in a talk. Okay, listen to our students. This is what at least 1,000 that talked to IHE or filled out a survey for IHE want. They want clear communication about these things. They want to be taught how to use them ethically. They actually want some help resisting the opportunities. Design assessments are harder to complete. Limit tech use in some classrooms. There are a lot of K through 12 schools that are going back to no cell phones in the class. I've heard that the people who invent these tools send their kids to schools where there are no devices at all. So we need to listen to our students. We need to lean into offering engaging human-to-human interactions. Students do not need us for content. They do not need us for knowledge delivery. They need us for structure. They need us for opportunities. They need us for mentoring and coaching. They need us for experiential learning. I left University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada in 2000 from a phenomenal cooperative education program. And they were everywhere, and they're still everywhere over in that side of the continent. They don't exist on the West Coast. We have students graduate without any work experience whatsoever. And we know that AI is going to take those entry-level jobs. So what are our students going to do when they graduate? It's not about teaching them AI so they can get those jobs. It's about getting them experience and real life, like we do with nurses and doctors. We get them into the field while they're in school, right? More flipped, engaged classrooms where people are doing the work of learning in class with each other, with the professor. Not coming to class and listening, well, like this, not coming and listening to somebody blab at you for an hour and then going home and doing the hard work of learning by yourself, but doing it together with other people. So learn it from AI. I don't care. Learn it from YouTube. Learn it from the textbooks I supply to you, but you're going to come to class and you're going to apply that knowledge to real problems. We really do need to decouple online asynchronous assessments from teaching modality. We keep talking about online learning versus in-person learning. There is no such thing. People learn online 24/7 all the time. There's a difference between online asynchronous assessments and supervised assessments, though. And we need to really take seriously our responsibility for certifying learning, not just facilitating it. This is from Western Sydney University. It's an Inspire and Assure model. It's adapted from the University of Sydney's two-lane approach. But really, they're talking about there are activities that inspire students to learn, and there's activities that ensure that students are learning. And sometimes in that top right quadrant, it does both. I'm just going to quickly do that because my animations are all messed up again. So the unsupervised is in the left-hand side. And in the top left quadrant, they're unsupervised, but they motivate students to do the work of learning because they're authentic. I've given the students some choice control. They're really going to get into it, right? On the bottom is all that work that doesn't motivate them and doesn't allow us to ensure they're learning. Then we've got the bottom right quadrant that assures they're learning. Not very inspiring, but that's okay. They need to know how to do basic math or whatever. And then up above is like where our flipped, active, engaged classrooms live. It motivates the students to do the working, and we know they're the ones doing it. You will have a computer-based assessment here. This is the Assessment Center Task Force that Igor mentioned that I'm chairing for the University of California system. These things are going to be helpful, not for every class, not for every assessment, but I do think that there is a place for assessment center where students go, they know exactly what to expect. It supports mastery-based learning, assessment, frequent mastery-based assessments, which we know are better for learning, right? It enables the faculty and TAs it frees up their time because they're coming to us for testing, so it frees up faculty and TAs time to do more. Maybe they're doing oral assessments with students, maybe they're doing review sessions, maybe they're doing coaching or tutoring of the students who are struggling. And it assures academic integrity. But it doesn't have to look like a computer-based testing center. This was an interesting example. I forget whether it was in IHE or CHE, but he did a multi-day in-class essay using computers but lockdown browser because he didn't want to give up the struggle, the thinking that goes into writing an essay, but he knew that students could offload it and fake it with ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever. And so he folded it into class, where they're doing it in class, so they're still getting some of the same experiences that they were getting before, but he can be more sure that they're actually getting the experience. So we can be creative, we can be imaginative about what secure assessments look like for our context, for the size of our classes, for every situational factor that's involved there. I think we need to unhide the durable curriculum. No more talk about soft skills. No more talk about the hidden curriculum. If it's important, it shouldn't be hidden. We need to really focus on durable human skills, because this is what's going to set our students, our graduates, apart from the machine. And this is what's going to have them bring added value to the workforce and to society. We need to revisit what we teach and why. I don't know. Do we have to be centered around content-based disciplines? Nobody, I'm going to get nasty letters for that one. Or should we be centered around these durable human skills? And we must intentionally integrate and assess them. So at the University of California, San Diego, we do have our co-curricular transcript where students could log their experiences, and I log the experience and then we certify the student did it. That's great. But we have to get away with this from this idea that we teach teamwork because we throw students into groups in a couple of classes without actually teaching them how to do that. Or that we teach communication skills because they handed in a research paper, an essay that we have no idea if they actually wrote. Another way to do secure assessments, a group of engineering faculty at UC San Diego did a big oral assessment project with as many as 250 students in a class. And not only did that provide academic integrity, but it engaged the students more because they knew they had to come and face a TA or an instructor and tell them what they knew, just like they're going to have to do in the world of work. You're not going to get away with telling your boss, I'm sorry, I'm not available for a synchronized meeting to tell you about this project. I'll send you an email. And yet there's some universities and colleges that prohibit faculty teaching online asynchronous classes from requiring a synchronous meeting with their students. And I think we need to ethically and intentionally integrate AI tools into the curriculum. I think we can do it to assist the learning process with 24/7 support. We're doing that, Triton GPT, and I believe Berkeley hopped onto this and got the Bear GPT or something. Have you heard about it? Okay. So they've now created, it's just a regular GPT, but they've also created, I'm piloting this, that a way I can train it to be a teaching assistant basically for my class, to tutor my students, to help my students without helping them cheat. We need to teach responsible use. So we've got a Canvas module at UC San Diego on AI literacy. And then, okay, this can't be left to individual faculty. At a program or department level, we have to figure out what is the foundational knowledge that we need to teach. What do people need to know in order to be able to effectively and responsibly use these tools, i.e. I have to be able to evaluate the output of these tools and know whether it's true or not. Then how do we scaffold, after we've taught, and we've assessed that foundational knowledge, then how do we scaffold in the cognitive offloading? And I would suggest it's not with a general purpose tool, but in data science, it would be with a very specific, narrow tool that data scientists are using out in the field, that we integrate that into the curriculum. We scaffold student learning to that tool. Nobody's using general purpose tools for real tasks. They're using it for email and stuff. They've got specific AI tools in data, and I'm pointing at them because that's their major. They've got specific AI tools that they need to learn how to use. And this is my last point. We can't keep asking faculty to rebuild the plane as they're flying it. They can't teach the class and redesign at the same time, and they shouldn't be expected to redesign it for free during the summer and on weekends and at nights. We have to figure out a way to provide faculty time, training, and support, and to actually demonstrate that we care about teaching and quality education and the facilitating and validating of learning, maybe even more than we care about publications. So thank you. You two want to come up? There is a podcast that goes with my book, so I'm shamelessly plugging that. My AI disclosures about how much energy I might have used to create images for this presentation. Yeah, so now I think you're each going to give your responses and share your experiences, and then we'll open them up for questions.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Lynn. I'm currently a senior here at UC Berkeley. I'm an undergraduate student studying data science and cognitive science. And thank you so much for sharing your talk, Tricia, because I feel like a lot of it really resonated with me. To begin with, when you said grades are currency, I feel like that really kind of brought me into this idea of like why students are starting to use AI in the first place. So just for some context, I come from Las Vegas, Nevada. Our education system is not super great, but it did end up me like being very wanting to come to California and achieve this higher education. And grades were really important to me back then, and I really invested so much time into learning everything that I could so that I can come to UC Berkeley. And now that I'm here, I remember entering for the first time and being surrounded by so many ambitious students. And at first it was very intimidating. And I really thought to myself that I maybe wasn't as knowledgeable as I thought. Maybe I wasn't as skilled as I thought I was. And so it kind of led to a lot of points of struggle where you constantly compare yourself to other students. And I still even remember my freshman year, which was back in 2022. There was no ChatGPT yet. So I was still there trying really hard to understand my CS courses, my data science courses, because this is something that was super new to me. And I haven't used AI yet, so I remember when my friend introduced me for the first time saying, you can give this AI a prompt and it'll give everything to you. You can ask it to code you this program and it'll do it. And I was so shocked by this, and I thought this was an amazing thing. And I was somebody that was at office hours for like 6 hours a day trying to get help, getting my 15 minutes of time with a teaching assistant, and not actually getting as much exposure because it's hard to debug your code and it's hard to really get that kind of help with only 15 minutes of time. Like, they can't understand your entire program within those 15 minutes. And so I would begin using AI as that tool to help me out, and it ended up being much faster experience. I would ask AI, why is my code not working? And I agree that it does become some sort of codependency, because you start to think, why would I need to go out of my way, all the way 20 minutes across campus to attend office hours only for a couple minutes and get maybe some help when you can just ask AI to help you debug your code or try to understand a concept? And so that's what I think a lot of students here at Berkeley, that their kind of mindset is now. And I've been noticing a lot from my peers that people are attending lectures less, they're attending office hours less, just because they can just ask ChatGPT to either summarize the lecture notes or explain a concept to you or debug your code. And that kind of goes a lot in line with what Tricia was mentioning earlier about courses that kind of relate to your major and those that don't, your general requirements. And I spoke to a lot of my peers, and a lot of peers use ChatGPT, Gemini, all those AI tools, to write essays for them and to kind of complete those tasks, because those aren't the skills they feel like are going to be relevant for their career. So as data science majors, yeah, we're going to be learning a lot about machine learning. We're going to need to know how to do Python, but they might not feel like they have the need to learn history or to write an essay or to write a paper. And so that kind of lack of motivation, lack of self-efficacy, like they don't feel motivated to really learn it themselves. And so that's another reason why I feel like a lot of students kind of gear towards using AI for those methods and efforts. And I really agree with the point also about having to find ways for students to get more engaged in the classroom. I'm currently on course staff for a course here on campus called Data 144, and we have been completely virtual for the past 5 years. And this is the first semester where we finally have proctored exams. So we require students who are taking the exam online to have their cameras on, but we also offer an in-person exam. And I have friends taking this course as well, and they've told me, I also want to take this in-person option because I also don't want to be tempted. I don't want to be tempted by having my computer next to me and knowing that I have the option to go to ChatGPT and answer the questions on B courses. And I didn't even know there was that extension that answers questions for you. I feel like that's kind of crazy, but I really appreciate that from some of my peers. They were like, yeah, I know that I probably won't be able to resist that temptation either. So I think that that's really interesting. And talking to other friends on data science course staff here at Berkeley, there have been plenty of people who have started implementing in-person exams, in-person quizzes. You have to sign up on a schedule and attend in person and in front of a proctor or a supervisor, complete your quizzes, and that's proof that you do learn. And I feel like that's really important because if a class is completely online, there's no evidence that you actually know what you're talking about. But if you're in an in-person quiz and you have to write an essay right there, you have to answer problems, that is the true indicator of how much you know. And so for me, I like to use AI more as a tutor, as asking questions repeatedly, like, oh, you're explaining this to me, like I don't quite understand this section that you were saying, can you explain a little bit further? And in that sense, I feel like AI can be very useful and a very meaningful tool for students to use to learn. But at the end of the day, I do think classrooms implementing these in-person assessments have been very meaningful and useful for students to learn. And I think it's just starting where things are going to get a lot harder to manage. But I think that everyone's adapting and still learning about the best way to integrate AI. So that's something that it's very interesting to think about. Thank you.
Hi, is this on? Okay. Hi, my name is Smriti, and I'm a second year studying data science and political science. So I actually completed high school and middle school and most of my schooling in India, and I kind of wanted to talk about how the education system there differs from here a little bit. So ChatGPT came out, I think, when I was in 10th grade, and in India, all of my assignments or everything that I was graded on was completely like in-person exams, in-person assignments. Nothing was virtual, and so I don't think I ever used ChatGPT for anything in school, but my first introduction to ChatGPT was an assignment that my brother had due, and he was in middle school at the time, and for my school specifically, middle school was more dependent on like your specific school, while high school like assignments were more standardized. So my brother had this like creative assignment where he had to write a poem and submit it, and he showed me that he just like put the prompt into ChatGPT and it like generated a poem for him. And I was surprised because I really like creative writing, and so when he told me that this was his assignment, I was like excited. I was like, oh, you should like write it like this or do it like that. And then he showed me the prompt, and I found myself actually liking the poem that it generated. And then I was like thinking to myself, like, is this really a machine? Like, is this really something that it generated from scratch, or is it like drawing from an existing poem? So I think that was my first like introduction to ChatGPT, but I had like no use for it at school at all because everything that I was graded on was an in-person physical exam. So I never found myself like needing to use it for school. And so I don't think I really like explored ChatGPT or any other AI tool like while I was in high school. But my first introduction to it, like in an educational context, was a class I took here at Berkeley my freshman fall. It's the introductory CS class, so it's called CS 61A, and I'm actually on course staff for it now. But as a part of this class, there is an inbuilt AI bot that is like created by the professor of the class, and it helps you like debug your code. It like tells you in natural language, like maybe like consider changing this, but it doesn't actually give you any code to like help you solve the problem. And I was surprised by it because I was a little surprised that they had integrated this AI tool into like the course itself and we were allowed to use it. But they had also like strictly prohibited the use of any other AI tool. So I found myself like using that bot a lot, like just being like, does this code work? Or can I change, or like I used to like change aspects of my code and then like rerun it to see what the bot would say. But another thing was the bot was only used for, or only implemented for certain assignments, and there were other assignments where the bot wasn't implemented at all. And I knew a lot of my peers would use AI, like other AI tools for those assignments, but I still found it helpful that the course allowed us to use AI for some aspects of it, while still having physical exams and physical like final exams to test our knowledge. And I think that was my introduction to how AI can be integrated into classes to assist with some aspects of the learning experience without like taking away from learning completely. Another example I wanted to mention was a more creative class I took at Berkeley. It was hosted by the German department, but it was completely in English, and it was about literary AI. So the idea of the course was to introduce us to more philosophical like ideas surrounding AI in the literary space. So can AI be an author? If AI authors a piece of work, does the AI like claim ownership? Is that an original piece of work? But we also had a segment of the class where we had to like generate our own digital literature, and what that means was like using tools, whether that's AI or like a Python program, to generate literature. And the class was open to anyone from like English majors to EECS majors, so there were a lot of people who had like no coding experience, and the professor allowed us to use AI to like for our final project, we had to like generate a piece of digital literature, and the professor told us you can use AI to actually like write the code for what you want to do, because I know a lot of you like don't have coding experience and you may have creative ideas, but you may not have the technical skills to implement them. So I'm okay with you using AI to actually implement your ideas, but I want your ideas to be your own, and I want you to explain to me why you chose this certain idea. And I think that was also an effective way to sort of show that AI can be used productively, but doesn't have to like take away from the learning process. In my like personal day-to-day coursework, I definitely do use AI tools, but I think, as Lynn mentioned, I mainly use it like a personal tutor and to like help me understand code. I think it's really effective if I like paste a code segment into AI and be like, I don't understand why they like solved it like this. Can you explain to me if there are any other approaches I could take to solve this? And I think it is useful for that. But I do not use it for any sort of like writing or creative work, because personally I really enjoy the creative process, but I also initially used to use AI for feedback. And like Tricia mentioned, it wouldn't just stop at feedback. It would be like, how about you rewrite it like this? And then it would give me a paragraph, and I would find myself drawn to like maybe using one or two sentences from that. And then like I realized that this was sort of like taking away from my own voice, so I stopped using AI for like writing assessments altogether. And I think in general what I've noticed is that there are a lot of places that AI can be implemented, but I think there are still some disciplines where it would be better to like restrict the use of AI or like limit it to really minimal things to sort of give us the opportunity to go through the own like difficult process of trying to come up with an idea, thinking of how we can implement that idea, like searching for tools or searching for resources where we can learn more about implementing the idea. Like even with writing, I think a lot of people do prefer to use AI for brainstorming just because they want to see what a machine could give them. But I personally still really like talking to my friends about my ideas and bouncing ideas off of each other. And even if my friends don't have as much knowledge on the topic as a machine would have, I think there's still something personalized about talking to another person about your ideas and seeing what different perspective that they could offer that a chatbot that is designed to validate you couldn't offer. And so I think in general, I personally think AI can be effective in disciplines where it's more about understanding why something is a certain way, and when there's usually a right answer and you need to understand why the answer is correct, and then that sort of builds intuition for how you can arrive at your own right answers yourself. But I think in disciplines where there's a lot more subjectivity and we don't want a single right answer, but there's multiple approaches that people can take, I think there is a lot of value in not using AI and still encouraging students to sort of figure out their own process for how things work and figure out their own answers. And so in the future, I hope we can sort of see that in different approach for different disciplines.
So question.
Thank you so much to everyone on the panel. We just had light bulbs. If you could just show the image above our head, we had all these light bulbs going off. My question is, I want students thinking in this way. There's definitely a moral obligation in terms of how you're sharing your stories and how you utilize AI. So has any university contemplated changing what their foundational courses are? Because we always say a standard entry-level English course may be needed to apply to this program.
Right.
But how are we integrating this knowledge as a foundational course?
The AI knowledge as a foundational course? I think, yes, there are some, is this on? There are some schools that are doing that. There are lots of schools doing it. Yeah, I think a first year or experience course should just all be, remember we used to do that? How does college work, and helping students figure things out, and AI should be a big part of that. What you heard here were two very self-regulated learners.
Yeah.
Two people who want to learn and who are dedicated to learning and using it in the right way. So they're both self-regulated learners as well as moral actors, right? They kind of say, oh, I got tempted and I realized I should pull back from that. That's great to hear and isn't not always likely between midnight and 3 a.m. When people are tired and they're stressed and they're losing their minds a little bit, right? It's much harder to make good decisions at that point. But I think you're absolutely right. It depends on the learning objectives, and we have to teach them how to use it properly because they're begging us for that because they're just winging it at this point, and some smart ones can figure it out. But it's hard to realize, how do you resist that pull that it has?
Yeah, just to add on to that, I know that we talked, Tricia, before your presentation about how we're here at UC Berkeley, which is a top university. And so just knowing that you want to take advantage of all the coursework and just being able to engage with other people, I feel does motivate people. And from what I've been hearing from other students too, a lot of AI use and all that temptation, like I was kind of mentioning before, stems from courses where they feel they're not going to be needing to know that knowledge for their career. Somebody wants to go into software engineering, they might not need to know how to write this perfect 5-paragraph essay. And so I feel a lot of it comes from, I don't know, just knowing that they want to learn all that concepts themselves, something that they genuinely need to know in the industry and something they're genuinely interested about too. And I just wanted to also add, I'm currently taking a class right now called Data 104. It's data ethics, and it's actually one of my favorite classes I've ever taken here in my 4 years. And just being able to discuss with other students that are going into data science, learning about how AI is just really blowing up right now and how to handle AI, how to use it when they're in the industry, how to use it ethically. I feel that kind of course is really meaningful. And it might not be really an introductory course, which I feel there should be, but I feel it's still a requirement for the data science major, and I think that's a really meaningful course to have.
Yeah. It's so a couple of things. One, maybe we shouldn't be requiring a 5-paragraph essay anymore. Maybe it is a 20th century thing. It was a vehicle through which we were trying to teach those durable human skills, like critical thinking and problem solving and persistence through difficult tasks and tenacity and all of these things, right? And it's not really about the 5-paragraph essay, but maybe there's more 21st century ways that we can help students develop those same skills that isn't as easily or as desirable to fake. We do this exercise with our students in the after education program where we give them a very typical like writing assignment in a Gen AI course, like first do this, then do this. And we have them go through with the big wheel of durable human skills and identify what skills they might develop if they actually engage fully in each part of that exercise to help them see it's not really about the 5-paragraph essay, it's about the skills you develop in doing the 5-paragraph essay. We need to do a better job communicating that to students.
I had a friend, not at this university, but a different one, who mentioned to me that he was taking a statistics class like this semester that was really exciting for him because he couldn't get like correct answers like from ChatGPT. He had told me that I know that a class is hard and going to be challenging for me when ChatGPT doesn't immediately give me the answer. And I thought that was really, like, first of all, not the way I would approach it, but I thought it was interesting because, first of all, he was kind of revealing that he was like using ChatGPT for everything, but second, it kind of framed the like fault to be on instructors for designing a course that would like be really easy to use ChatGPT on rather than like his own fault for, I guess, using ChatGPT on it. And I think that kind of got me thinking about like how you can redesign courses to not use GPT. And when I was like searching for professors for like a class I want to take, I saw this comment about a professor on Rate My Professor. Like a student mentioned that this professor like puts their questions into GPT multiple times and then like edits them until GPT can't answer that. And I kind of found that interesting because you are like making the class harder, obviously, but you are, I guess, involving students more to actually go search for answers. And I just was thinking about whether that can be something that's sort of used to improve classes and make them less susceptible to like AI involvement.
Thank you so much for this excellent keynote and panel. I was taking such rapid notes. I have been trying to figure out how to formulate this question. Something that I get asked, I am the director of our Center for Teaching and Learning here, all the time is, where is the AI policy? And we get this question from students and from faculty. And our Senate came up with AI guidance that I think boils down to each faculty member has to understand what options there are, but has agency and ownership over how they make those decisions. I think that's right. I also think it's unsatisfying, especially as I know folks are looking, and Tricia, you said this, and both of you have said this as well, that everyone's looking for guidance and support and how to center learning. So I guess here's my question. Is there a use for AI policy? And if so, how could it most satisfyingly give faculty the agency that I think they need to own their courses successfully, while also creating the ethical frameworks that I think we're all desiring to continue making learning a valid and meaningful experience?
So it's a great question, and I do think that's the right policy, because whether AI is appropriate or not depends on the learning outcomes for the course, right? And it depends on whether the students need to have that knowledge first before they could effectively use AI. So we do have to leave it up to the professors. I would say the departments. I do believe that departments should be talking about this, and they should be figuring out in our coursework, in our major, where should AI appear, where should it not, and be intentional about it, not each individual instructor trying to make this up as they go along. So I think that's the first thing. Again, that two-lane approach would say there should be a bit more satisfying of an answer, which is if it's an unsupervised assessment, you can't ban AI. So you don't have a choice, professor. These are assessments for learning. You're gonna, if you're not supervising them, you're gonna have to assume students are using them. But students have to disclose, and part of that is increasing their AI literacy. their metacognition, they're thinking about how they're thinking. What tool did I use? Did I find it helpful or did I find it hindered my learning? Would I use it the same way again? Would I use a different tool? Because I found ChatGPT is way more sycophantic than Claude, for example, and I would use Claude. I've used Claude to help me do fiction writing because it's not as intrusive as ChatGPT is, right? So learning how to do all of that and disclosing that, and that also means being prepared to share my prompts and all of my chat history with my professor if they ask, so that we could talk about, oh, I see how you were started to use it, but see here, this is where you gave up and you let ChatGPT take over for you. And so we can treat it as a learning moment, not as a cheating moment. And then for those cases, those learning objectives where a student has to master it without AI, that's when we do the secure supervised assessments as you were mentioning. So I think our policy does need to say it's up to learning outcomes. I think our policy does need to say students, just like before when you couldn't ask Joe to do your exam for you, you cannot ask like AI to do it for you. I don't care what your professor says. No, you can't have AI do your quiz for you. And, right, because that's, and we have to pay attention to what are the learning outcomes that need to be mastered, and are they amplified with AI or are they hindered with AI? Sorry, I talked too long.
Yeah, thank you so much for such an engaging discussion. We have a 10 minutes break, and we reconvene at 4 for our concluding panel of the day.
If you don't want a break and you want to come talk to us, we're going to sit here for you. That's less time for questions. Sorry, I talked too long. I stopped doing it. I tell stories. Yeah, and I'm sorry for the tears. That's never happened before.